All right, so today we're going to be going over the top trade target for each NFL team. Now, this isn't each team's target who they should go after before the trade deadline. This is each team's best trade piece as a player. So, you know, this isn't going to be involving draft picks in terms of teams trading that away. This is going to be players only, and it's going to be the best trade piece from each team. Gonna start with the NFC East. Uh, with Philadelphia, I think a guy who's kind of obvious is AJ Brown. Um, the Eagles' best hope at winning a Super Bowl this year, I think, includes AJ Brown. But I don't think that that means they couldn't win without him. I think the Bills or the Colts could make things really interesting and possibly dangle a late first round pick either this year or next year for the chance to pair A.J. Brown with their quarterbacks for the rest of the year. I'm sure A.J. Brown would relish the opportunity to take over as the lead guy in the receiver room week in and week out, especially it just seems like off the field there's some noise about it being a possibility. Dallas, I have Jalen Tolbert, another receiver. Last year, there was only 2 games in which Tolbert had 2 or less targets. This season, Tolbert has 2 or less targets in 5 of the 8 games that he's played. Now, it just seems like he's kind of found himself as the odd man out, even though he just came off of a 2024 season where he was first on the team in touchdowns, second in receiving yards, and third in receptions. Now, there's obviously a talented player with Jalen Tolbert, but there's not really a real route to him being a focal point of this offense. You have George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, and Javonte Williams, who are all playing at a really good level right now at their positions. So Jalen Tolbert kind of trying to get into a starting lineup or become a main piece is just not going to happen. I could really see Dallas trading Tolbert to a team like New England, Pittsburgh, or Carolina, all teams that could stand to see their second, third receiver spot upgraded. The Washington Commanders, I have Jacob Martin. Now, Martin is currently on pace to have his best season of his career. Be that as it may, it might be of benefit for the Commanders to get something of value, even if it's a late round selection in 2027, considering the age, lack of true average production in his career, and the free agency status at the end of this year. Martin seems to fit the bill of those defensive line depth pieces that coaches and defensive coordinators love to have. The Chiefs, Patriots, Bengals, these are all teams that should be improving their pass rush depth, and Martin could help in that regard. For the New York Giants, Darius Slayton, another receiver. And if you're a Giants fan, I'm sure it would be kind of hard to say goodbye to somebody like Darius Slayton. But to me, it seems obvious that he's just not going to be a common target for Jackson Dart. It seems like Dart has targeted more of the Wan'Dale Robinsons or Theo Johnsons, and when he was playing Cam Scadaboo. And so it seems like Darius Slayton has just not really been a guy that's been depended on. And that's okay. That's not to say that Darius Slayton has fallen off or that he's a bad player. It's just maybe as this offense goes with Jackson Dart at the helm, he doesn't fit with that type of offense. But I think he's still capable of being a number 2 receiver with high upside potential and the potential to just be really dependable. I think the Bills, Texans, and Falcons all could use a confident option next to their top targets at the position. Now with the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I have Rachaad White being their top trade target. Now, it's a really interesting decision to make at the trade deadline. With all of the injuries that they have had at the skill group, do they want to have a heavy reliance on Rachaad White and possibly risk his asking price in free agency to go above what the Bucs are willing to pay and just simply lose him for nothing? Or do they cash out on the fact that he's a young, really good running back, and some teams would love to have him as their lead back? I think the Steelers, Texans, these are teams that I think would love to have the chance to make him their focal point of the offense in the running game. And he's a guy that would add in the passing game as well. I think especially if a team would be trading for him, considering him solely a rental piece. His contract is gonna be he's gonna be a free agent at the end of this year. And so a team like the Chiefs or the Bears, I think you could throw them into the mix as well. Especially with the Chiefs, they just haven't had good production at running back. The Bears, DeAndre Swift is hurt. They could form a great tandem if Swift was healthy too, between him and Rashad White. From the Carolina Panthers, Damani Richardson. He's a guy who played a lot to end the season in 2024. He started 3 straight games. He really hasn't had his number called this year. He's only played 10 snaps on defense all season while maintaining a steady role on special teams. Last year, he proved his worth as a solid run support safety in a short stint. I think teams like the Dolphins, Titans, or Cowboys all could use a guy who wouldn't require an above average value for an extension on a contract, and he could be a cheap, young building block for their secondary. From the Atlanta Falcons, I think it has to be Kirk Cousins. I think as long as Kirk is on the roster, and anytime Michael Penix struggles or the offense struggles, there's always going to be the question, are you going to go to Kirk Cousins now that Penix is struggling? And even though the answer is probably going to be no, zero chance, they're still going to get the question, and they're still going to have people asking. Now, they might not care, but they also might see it as something of value to just put all those questions behind us. Let's trade Kirk Cousins, get something that either helps us in the future, or if they're able to trade him for another player, they could help us now. I think it only makes sense to call the Minnesota Vikings and just see what it would take to get Kirk back to Minnesota. He would have an obvious rapport with Jefferson and Addison. And again, he could be the piece that kind of helps both of these teams get better in the short term and in the long term. For the New Orleans Saints, I have Cam Jordan. Now, there's a lot of names that you could look at for the Saints. I think Olave, Kamara, even Justin Reed, even though he just got signed this year. For some teams, even to an extent, Chase Young. But I think Cam Jordan is kind of that vet piece that a team like Kansas City, Buffalo, Indianapolis, these are all top-tier teams that present the opportunity for Jordan to still play and have an impact on a really good team. He, I wouldn't doubt, would want to stay with New Orleans for the rest of his career, be a lifelong Saint, be considered one of the best New Orleans Saints of all time. But I also think he'd probably love the opportunity to try to win a Super Bowl. And his best chance to do that is, unfortunately, to be traded from the Saints. From the Green Bay Packers, I have Lucas Van Ness. Now, he's definitely not a more household name, but he was the 13th overall pick just a few seasons ago. And he's kind of seen his playing time dip, but that makes sense considering the Packers traded for possibly the best pass rusher in the NFL in Micah Parsons, and they have another really good one in Rashawn Gary. And Van Ness has kind of fallen to the back of the pecking order among the defensive linemen in Green Bay there. So honestly, there's upwards of 5 to 10 teams I think could be interested in Van Ness, a guy who presents the chance for a lot of teams who probably liked him in the draft to get him at a price that's much lower than the first-round selection that the Packers used on him. From Detroit, I have DJ Reader. So Aleem McNeil came back last week, and he's a guy that the Lions really like. And after McNeil, they have Reader, Roy Lopez, Tyleik Williams, Tyler Lacey, and Pat O'Connor, all as guys who have played this year. Now, Reader is the only one of those that is a free agent at the end of this year. And I think his price tag, it's going to be a little bit higher than what Detroit is going to want to pay to retain him. I think the Dallas Cowboys could take a swing on bringing Reader into a room that also already features Kenny Clark and Osa Odighizuwa, and see if that group can help turn around their defense that has been below average. The Chicago Bears with Cole Kmet. Now, I don't really know what's gone on with Cole Kmet and the Bears the last couple of years. He had his career best season in 2023, And ever since then, it's like the Bears have tried to get someone else to take his spot. Last year, it was Gerald Everett getting signed, and this year, it was Colston Loveland getting drafted. And I tell you what, you can love having two really good tight ends on your roster. I guarantee you didn't draft a first round tight end at what it was ninth overall. It was a very high overall selection just to have Cole Kmet be on the bench for $12 million. I guarantee that that's not what you think is the best idea. I think the Panthers, Commanders, and even the Houston Texans all are teams that could take Kmet for probably not a steep price and make him a focal point of their offense today. The Minnesota Vikings, I have Jalen Nailor. No, I don't think the Vikings would actually trade Jalen Nailor, but I also think that there is a very small chance that they're able to re-sign him in the offseason. He could be another one of those guys that helps teams like the Panthers, the Ravens, or the Falcons improve their depth behind their top receiver options. To the NFC West with the Los Angeles Rams, Troy Reeder. Now, if you ask me, the Rams, I think, are the least likely team to make a deal at the trade deadline, unless they're just getting an absolute stud in return for solely just draft compensation, which would be a very Rams thing to do. I think the best player that they would deal is Troy Reeder. He's a guy who's played a lot of football. He's started for the Rams for a long time. He could be someone like New England or Pittsburgh or even the Chargers. Would love to bring in as a really good locker room presence that can help be a mentor, vet for young players on the roster, and just be, a very good special teams player as well. He's a guy who, even though he's not starting anymore, is still making an impact for the Rams on special teams, and that's always a value. The Seattle Seahawks with Reek Woolen. Now, Woolen has had a solid showing in Seattle's last couple of games, but who knows how long that could last. This is a contract year for Woolen, but in the next 2 years, you're also going to see guys like Charles Cross, Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker, Anthony Bradford, Leonard Williams, Kobe Bryant, Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, and Josh Jobe all be unrestricted free agents. That's not even throwing in the contract that the Seahawks are going to have to give Jackson Smith and Jigba and Devin Witherspoon. That's probably going to be somewhere in the combined $35 to $50 million yearly for each of those, for those two players collectively. And so Reek Woolen, I think, just kind of finds himself as the odd guy out in that equation. He's going to be a guy that even if he finishes this season as it just being an average year, with his size and his early success he had with Seattle, someone's going to want to take a chance on him being their number one or even number two cornerback. I think you try to trade him now and try to trade him to those teams that would love to bring him in and compete for that number one, number two spot. A team like the Dolphins, the Jets, Saints, or the Raiders. I think the Raiders would be a great team to call. I guarantee Pete Carroll would love to have Tariq Woolen on his defense, especially as a starter. The San Francisco 49ers, I guess it's Brandon Ayuk. I admittedly don't like this at all. I don't think anyone's going to like this. But who else would you even call about on the Niners? I mean, I honestly think the phone would probably get hung up if anyone was asked about, except for maybe Brandon Ayuk. Now, he supposedly is going to be back soon. So I'm sure that the Niners would appreciate having him on the field in their uniform when he is back playing. But I also really wouldn't be surprised if a team that has a young quarterback and a lack of a number one receiver, like the New York Giants do while Malik Neighbors is on the mend, would possibly call and offer San Francisco something that they wouldn't be able to refuse. With the Arizona Cardinals ending with a pretty good player in Budda Baker. Now, from the sounds of things, Baker is interested in staying with the Cardinals, but everyone knows that this is a business, including Baker himself, which is why I would not be surprised if the Bills, the Jaguars, or the Bengals made a move to make Budda Baker the star of the back end of their defense. That's going to be part one of this video. Part two should be up around the same time, if not within the same day or so. of this video. We'll go through all of the AFC teams and their best trade piece. If you like this video, make sure you like it, make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment, and I'll see you in the next video.